So we're super excited to have Blaine here with us today. Blaine is a GRAR member, founder, chief appraiser, business coach at Real Value Group, correct, Blaine?
Yep.
If you know anything about this guest speaker this morning, you can guarantee that in addition to his busy appraisal business, he's also known also well known as a sought after teacher, speaker, business coach, and he speaks regularly to the real estate and lending groups around Michigan. We're so honored to have him here at YPN and to get his take on this super fun spring market. So before founding Real Value Group, Blaine led a large residential and commercial appraisal firm to exponential growth while also starting another venture offering business training and coaching to new and existing appraisers within the firm. During this time, Blaine developed one of the most comprehensive appraisal training programs the industry had seen up to that point. Blaine's appraisal training programs cover aspects of appraisal profession, typically not taught in licensing courses and mentoring programs. The course covers topics such as sales and marketing, social media, business development, utilizing the latest technologies, public speaking, and using video technology, optimizing an office, using virtual assistants, developing web presence, podcasting, and using videos for success, mentoring other appraisers, vital communication for appraisers, and know how to work on your business while working in your business. Also, I learned this, Macy found this out, that a fun fact about Blaine is, Blaine, you are a 4th degree black belt in the martial art of, how do you say this?
Aikido.
Aikido, and you have been a full-time live-in student under the Zen master, and I'm gonna let you say their name.
Miss Toyota is his last name.
Okay, yeah. So with that being said, let's focus back on the spring market. We're excited to tap into Blaine's extensive appraiser experience and hear what he feels about the spring market has in store in terms of home values. Also, what improvements are receiving the highest return on your investment and other trends you foresee to move forward the rest of the year. So everyone grab your coffees or whatever you're drinking at 9 a.m. and let's welcome Blaine.
Well, thank you, Megan. I really appreciate the awesome introduction. I didn't expect you to pull that all off of my website, but I appreciate that.
Macy did it.
Yeah, thank you, Macy.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that.
We're super excited.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. Is there a maximum age for the Young Professionals Network? I know I've exceeded it, but I'm just curious.
40.
No. Well, I'm way past it then.
No. And also, any questions? Blaine asked for questions earlier, so go ahead and drop those in the chat, and I'll make sure you see them too.
Yep, and I have the chat up as well. I'm a Zoom pro, so I'll see some of them as well. But yeah, feel free to ask. And if anybody's ever been to in a room where I've given a talk about something, you know that hopefully I am more interested in your questions than I am in just spewing information at you. So ask away. That usually kind of directs and guides our discussion. But happy to certainly start off talking about, of course, this crazy spring market. And it's not even really crazy spring market. It's just the crazy market in general that keeps evolving. It's phase 6 of whatever started years ago with low interest rates, low inventory, low cost of funds, all of that stuff. So as you well know, we're just seeing new iterations and evolutions of purchase agreements. We're seeing, of course, every clause under the sun just shy of you having to buy the seller's new home for them is being written into every purchase agreement. So how that affects appraisals, of course, is probably on everybody's mind. So let's first set out what an appraisal is and the job of the.
What does your dad need from us for taxes? Did he get it yet?
Somebody's closing a deal. Did you guys hear that?
He's breaking.
Or ordering coffee and breakfast. The job of the appraiser and of the appraisal. Let's start with the job of the appraiser first. I think quite often when I'm in discussions with agents or lenders, especially if they're upset because maybe the appraisal came in lower than what they expected, sometimes I think appraisers are given a little too much of the responsibility of supporting value, when in reality, all an appraiser is a reporter in the market. That's really all we do. And I know some appraisers' personalities or attitudes sometimes will cross that line where they talk like they are the arbiter of value on deals. The appraiser's job is to remain objective and unbiased. That's in the language that kind of governs the appraiser profession, is objective, unbiased. And the appraiser's job is to uphold and maintain the public trust in the real estate system. So if you think about a real estate transaction, and all the different people involved, you got agents on both sides of things. Typically, you've got lenders, you have title people, and then you have appraisers and inspectors. Appraisers and inspectors are typically the only ones in a real estate transaction that are not motivated by a commission, meaning we don't get paid based on the size of the deal, nor do we get paid if the deal gets closed. So, and that is by design, and that is so that we can remain objective and unbiased. If we were incentivized on every deal, of course, you wouldn't be getting good, honest appraisals. Now, one of the limitations and downfalls of an appraisal and for an appraiser is we are only as good as the best information available to us at the time of an appraisal. So as many of you know, an appraisal is based on what's called an effective date. There's two dates in an appraisal, the effective date and the signed date. And they're usually, sometimes it can be the same day, sometimes several days apart. But the effective date is what the value is based on. And that is typically the day we are out at the house, out at the property, at least on a sale transaction. If you order a, say, date of death appraisal from us, you're settling an estate, we might have to look back a year, and the effective date is when grandma or grandpa passed away. But in a real estate transaction where there's going to be a mortgage, the effective date is the date the appraiser goes out there. And typically that means the comparable sales that we choose have to be as of the effective date or typically before. Now, there are some circumstances where we can use a sale that closes a week after the effective date. Either way, we are only as good as the best comparable sales and comparable sale data that is available to us at the time, or the effective date, at the time of the sale. The second date is the sign date. That's just usually a week later when we sign the appraisal and send it off. So where appraisals are, of course, running into issues these days is every sale that you guys are conducting and concluding is the highest sale since yesterday. You are, you're looking at what happened down the street and you're going, well, the market is going crazy. And then of course we have reached what investors have called irrational exuberance. I think it was one of the Fed chairpersons many years ago who coined that term, probably back in 2007 and 8, when he said basically the market has reached a level of irrational exuberance. And we see it with buyers who, of course, understandably have competed on 10, 15, 20 homes and lost out on all these deals. And they get a little more irrational with each one of those losses. And of course, the agents are coaching them and saying, listen, if we want to win the next one, you got to put this, this, and this into the purchase agreement or the offer. And so understand that, of course, what buyers are trying to do and typically basing their decisions on, fortunately or unfortunately, in most cases based on monthly payment, where the appraiser is looking at the overall total value of the home in the market as of that time and based on comparable sales. So quite often we will get arguments back from agents and lenders saying, yeah, but these people really want it and they can afford it and they love it and they're going to be there for 50 years. And none of that makes a difference in an appraisal. An appraisal is an objective, unbiased, third-party view reporting of what has gone on in the market with similar sales. That's it. Appraiser isn't saying whether or not the house is worth it, because worth takes on different meanings depending on which party you are in the transaction. Seller thinks it's worth X, buyer thinks it's worth Y. Appraiser, doesn't matter what the appraiser thinks. Appraiser reports that based on comparable sales, it is worth Q, at least from the lender standpoint. And understand, when there is a federally related mortgage transaction, which is when the appraiser gets called in on a mortgage deal, it is essentially the lender saying, Blaine, tell us how much risk there is on this deal. So appraisers are effectively part of the risk mitigation department of any lending transaction, and for Fannie Mae. Our job is to assess and report, again, there's that word, report what the risk is. What's the collateral and what does the market say? So that if the lender has to take that house back in a year, how much are they going to lose trying to sell it on the market based on what they've loaned on it? So that is essentially all an appraisal is. An appraisal isn't saying, hey, your house might be worth 10 or 20% more next year. We don't speculate on the future. All an appraisal is as of today or as of this particular date, the comparable sales in the market say this. So let's start with that. And see if there's any questions, I guess, that I see some popping up. So I will, or Megan or Seth, if you guys want to fire anything off.
Yeah, so a couple came in right as you started talking, so I'm not totally sure if they're right on value, but one of the questions is, can you explain why some lenders seem to meet purchase price and some never do? I'm assuming they mean the appraisals being ordered by the lender. Is there a different approach requested by each lender?
Great question. No good answer. Because I don't work for those lenders.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say, I don't know which lenders you're speaking of. It's an anecdote, and by the way, I would say, anytime we use absolutes like always, it's never true, right? The lenders don't always hit value, and appraisers don't always not hit value. But you may have worked on certain deals and situations where they just happened to meet value, and you just didn't see the ones that didn't meet value. It's called the success heuristic. We only tend to count the wins and we forget the losses, or vice versa. So there are no lenders in this city, I don't care what they say, that will have appraisers that meet value every single time. There are just going to be deals that comps aren't there. So I can't answer that question, unfortunately, because again, the appraiser's job is to report on what is in the market. Now, a variation of this question could be, if you had 5 appraisers appraise the same house on the same day, is it true that you'd come in with 5 different values? And to that, I would say, yeah, most likely, because it is not an exact science. Appraisers are human beings. We all have different training, different backgrounds, different paradigms of the world and how we see things. And there is no set rule or standards for how we choose comparable sales. What I saw in a house might be different than what another appraiser sees in terms of our assessment of condition and quality and updates. And, I review appraisals as well. So I review a good 400 or 500 appraisals each year from, lenders will send over and say, hey, we need a review on this. And so I see what other appraisers see and look at, and I get to assess and look at that and go, oh, well, I would have seen something, I would have guessed something different as I look at these photos. They're calling it completely updated when in fact the kitchen cabinets have only been repainted. To me, that's not completely updated. And you've seen that before on MLS listings. Completely remodeled kitchen, and they put new knobs on the cabinets and they painted them. That's not remodeled, at least not by most people's definition. So we tend to see that kind of thing. And that's where different values can be had by different appraisers. Also, there is no science to market adjustments. And as you know, an appraisal, one of the jobs of the appraiser is to put in all the comparable sales and then adjust for differences in condition, quality, size, beds, baths, amenities, and what have you. And appraisers are supposed to extract those adjustments from the market. So everybody on this call who is in our private Facebook group, Appraisers Helping West Michigan Agents, you'll see this question all the time. Hey, what's the adjustment for an in-ground pool? What's the adjustment for a chain link fence or shed or, whatever? As if we have a handy dandy adjustment card that says, chain link fence, that's $2,000, or a shed, that's $4,000. We don't. Our job is to research that specific market, that neighborhood, those types of houses, run a bunch of different calculations and go, do we see a market reaction? Remember those words. Does the market react to having a chain link fence versus not? Does the market react to 3 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms? Do we see a noticeable difference in sale prices over a 3-year period of similar style ranch homes in this particular area? And in one area, fences might be important, and in another neighborhood, nobody gives a crap about fences. So every neighborhood, every scenario, everything is specific to the research done in that area. And that's the appraiser's job, to figure that out, which is why with 5 appraisers on the same house on the same day, you're going to get 5 different values. Now, the hope would be that they'd all be within 5% or something of each other. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So it's kind of an offshoot of that same question, where, you know, different lenders use different appraisers. Some lenders have the ability to build their own panel. And typically good lenders like Seth, they will choose appraisers based on the quality of the report they're getting, not necessarily on, is this appraiser going to hit our value every time? That's not what, in my opinion, good lenders do. Mallory's on the call as well. Treadstone, same way. They build their panel based on the ones they know they're going to get good information from, because they're trying to make high quality, very expensive decisions on these loans. And then they have to package those things up and sell them back off to Fannie or Freddie or wherever they're going to go. And that's, in my opinion, what a good appraiser and a good lender do together. And the question a lot of times comes down to, are you okay with disappointing information? You know, we see a lot of times where people just they are not open to disappointing information. And although the appraiser is called in to give you an honest, unbiased, objective, third-party view and opinion of value as of today, quite often in this market, people go, nah, I don't care. I don't want to hear what he or she has to say. We just want the deal to be done. And that's where a lot of the difficulties are arising in this type of market. Because again, when you look at the definition of value and worth to the separate parties, they mean different things. It's called equivocation, where different definitions for the same word are used by different parties to a transaction. Appraisers use a definition of value that's set forth by Fannie Mae. Buyers use a completely different definition of value. Buyers go, well, this thing is worth $1 million to me. I mean, think of great grandma's wedding ring, Megan, that you've been given after great grandma passes away. And then somebody says, I'll give you $10,000 for that ring. And you go, no way, it's priceless to me. That's the worth that it has for me. And then I say, well, Megan, there's gotta be a price. Name your price, 50 grand, 100 grand. We probably will get to a point where you go, oh, well, yeah, I guess I'd probably take $1 million for it. Okay, now we know what it's worth to you. But if we then take that ring to Medawar Jewelers and we say appraise it, they're going to appraise it on objective standards. The color, cut, clarity, and all of carat, they're going to have objective standards. And appraisers use objective standards. Although there's no science per se, the objective standards we use, comparable sales in the market. What have other buyers similar to you in similar markets said about similar homes as of today? And that's essentially what an appraisal is in the market.
That's an awesome answer. I feel like I just need to
I don't even remember what the question was.
I don't either, but I feel like I need to just take notes to tell all my buyers just that,
or just call Blaine. I'll answer them.
Yeah, can I just give them all your phone number?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I thought that was really helpful. I thought Katrina's question was really interesting. Can you speak to the value chain challenges that have been seen on new construction homes and developments where the lots were sold separately prior to the sale of home?
Yeah. So I know we've had some of these situations. Great question, Katrina. So there are some builders where they sell, I'm thinking maybe Alan Edwin or somebody like that, where they sell the lot first. Eastbrook, I think, might do the same thing in some situations. They sell the lot to the owner first, and then they build separately. So at the end of the day, in some situations, we will see the sale price of the home, at least as reported in the MLS, may not include the lot. And the lot value, of course, has value. So it can be a challenge, but I would say it's not a huge challenge for an appraiser because we have to research all that stuff. So where there is some kind of sale, there's going to be some kind of reporting. It's either going to be written into the construction agreement that Eastbrook or Alan Edwin puts out where they say owner owns the lot. And then we go, oh, well, let's go to the assessor and let's see how much they paid for the lot. And then we'll research other lots in the development and see what the value is. So typically we can piece together the lot value and the construction cost or value of the home as it relates to the open market. Now, where a challenge comes in is Fannie Mae has some very specific rules. Fannie Mae technically says that you're not supposed to derive value or opine value on a home by taking a lot value, a parcel value, and construction costs. They specifically say you should not derive value that way. But that doesn't mean that you can't look, and if every one of the homes in that development, they're selling the lot first and then building on the lot, that doesn't mean that there isn't value for the lot. It means that appraisers just have to report consistently in the appraisal and say, all of these lots have sold for 50 to 60,000. The subject parcel sold for 52.5, and construction costs were here, and similar homes sold for this with the lot built in. We do it all the time. Appraisers just have to do the research to see what the differences, what the lot costs are and the construction costs. Now, to add on to that, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask regarding new construction, it's on everybody's mind. The cost of materials, the cost of lumber, how is that being reflected in appraisal reports? Excellent question. Thanks for asking. The construction costs in new construction, let's go back to what an appraisal is. It is a reporting of what has gone on in the market as of the effective date of the appraisal. I feel sometimes when I explain this, I get people don't hear it because they go, well, how are you accounting for increases in plywood? Have you seen the cost of one sheet of plywood, Blaine? Yep. We follow lumber futures and materials futures weekly. CMEgroup.com, whatever it is, you can see the futures. You can see where the costs of materials are going in every 2 months, essentially. So we've been following lumber futures for the last 3 or 4 years. We've seen the massive ups and downs and what COVID's done to them, and Canadian mills shutting down and all the supply issues. And then we wait and see how it's reflected in the market. And because there's always a lag. So we will see a 3-month or 4-month or 5-month lag where all of a sudden you see, there's the increase in lumber materials costs, because most new construction deals were started 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. So they already bought their lumber package from Zealand Lumber at X price. What builders are realizing now is, crap, this could go on for a while. And they're pricing into their newer builds increases in lumber costs. They're not just trying to recover lumber costs. They're going, how do I make a profit if I don't build in increases to my newer homes? Here's the problem. Remember what an appraisal is. If there are no homes that are similar to that have sold for that price, either in that neighborhood or in similar and competing neighborhoods, the appraisal can't, at least not for a lending transaction where Fannie Mae is involved, the appraisal cannot reflect, unfortunately, those increases. Because the builder is saying, look, I built the same house for $350 4 months ago, but my lumber package was $28,000. Today, my lumber package is $40,000. So I have to increase my sale price. And then the appraiser comes in and goes, we get it. We totally get it. And there is one spot on an appraisal where that will show up. It's called the cost approach. It's about 4 pages in, and it's a little square, upper right-hand corner, where it breaks down the cost of the lot, the cost of the wood, the cost of the concrete, and all the materials. And that will typically reflect increases in material costs. Unfortunately, most lenders, I'll let Seth or Mallory, somebody speak on this, but most lenders will not lend based on the cost approach. They'll lend only on the sales comparison approach. And that is one of the limitations of an appraisal. Again, and I'm happy to call it a limitation of my job and of me, is I am only as good as the information available in the market. The lender wants facts. What have similar homes sold for today? Show me proof. So my sales comparison approach, which is the grid that everybody sees with the comps, at the bottom of that, bottom of page 2, is the opinion of value based on the sales comparison approach, where we're going to use the most recent sales, new construction sales in that development. The cost approach and the sales comparison approach could be $100,000 off. It won't matter. The lender needs proof, and the proof are the comparable sales. Do you agree, Seth?
Yeah, I've had it all the time, even not just lumber costs, when they put in, there's deck it to the nines inside the house with, crazy countertops and sinks. Yep. and fireplaces, and it's awesome, but it's hard to judge that compared, what would the next guy pay for that same fireplace?
Yeah, it's very difficult these days, and I understand people's frustration because when somebody is willing to pay something, they automatically feel that's the proof of value. You know, that's one of the first questions I ask when I give a talk at a real estate office is who sets the market, essentially? Who determines value? Well, Megan, what's the most common answer?
The buyer. The buyer will tell you what a buyer is willing to pay is what market value is.
Willing to pay. That's where value is set. And appraisers wouldn't disagree completely. It's just that we have to solve for a different problem. So let's go through this hypothetical scenario. You call me out to a transaction. They listed it for 210. They paid 260 with all kinds of escalation clauses and appraisal guarantees. And the buyer says, I want that house. And the seller says, I'm not selling it for anything less than what this buyer is willing to pay. I don't care if they walk or not. Appraiser comes out. We look for comps and we say, sorry, best comps I got, say 220. Better than 210, which was the listing price. Best I can get is 220. Buyer throws a fit, agent throws a fit. They see their paychecks flushing down the toilet at this point. They're upset at the appraiser, and then the appraiser throws up his hands and says, "Okay, fine. I'm gonna call Fannie Mae today, and I'm gonna say to him, listen, you guys don't understand. The buyer really wants this house, and they think it's worth it." And then Fannie Mae says, "Oh, well, why didn't you say so?" And it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. And those are the arguments we get all the time is, but you don't understand. They can afford it. They got another baby on the way. They're having twins and they love that place set in the backyard. And the appraiser goes, it doesn't matter to me. The comps aren't there to support it. And in a market where every sale, literally, not figuratively, literally is the highest sale since yesterday, if the comps aren't there, the comps aren't there. And the appraiser works off good comparable sales and information in the market. That doesn't mean every deal is coming in lower than sale price. We are finding crazily that sometimes those comps are there. They closed yesterday and you go, holy cow, look what they paid for that thing, but it's a good comp. And we put it in and we say, well, if we found support, there it is. Even if I disagree with it, if it's there, it's there. But if it's not there, whether it's new construction or existing construction, appraiser can't support it. It's just that, it really is that simple. Either the comparable sales are there or they're not, which leads usually to the next question. Well, can we go into different neighborhoods to find different comparable sales? So thanks for asking that question too. If we are jumping over better sales in the same neighborhood just to find sales that support your sale price in a superior neighborhood, that is a comp game that every appraiser, every lender, and every underwriter is hip to. It's called the comp game. We roll our eyes. We go, really? Okay. So I'm going to go from Grand Rapids schools into East Grand Rapids schools just to put a sale in to support your sale price. It does not work that way. The question we always have to ask is, would my buyers find that comparable sale, that one that we went into East Grand Rapids for, would they find that comparable sale a suitable alternative to the one they wanted to buy if the one they wanted to buy wasn't available? And normally when we ask that question, the agent has to get honest and go, well, no. And we say, well, why not? And they go, well, because they can't afford that one in the superior neighborhood. Well, if they can't afford that one in the superior neighborhood, then why would we throw it in as a comparable sale? Because the comparable sales are supposed to be from similar markets, similar neighborhoods, similar and competing neighborhoods. Well, if East Grand Rapids isn't a competing neighborhood to Grand Rapids, even if it's 2 blocks away, we get it. But if the sales aren't there in a similar and competing neighborhood, we're not going to jump lines just to fudge the appraisal and support a sale price. The appraiser's job is not to justify and support a sale price. The appraiser's job is to report honestly what's going on in the market. And if there is support in the market, and I'll say this right now, I might have to say it twice on this call, buyers are absolutely free to pay whatever they want for a house. I won't stop them. Megan, you won't stop them. Seth surely isn't going to stop them. They just aren't allowed to have everybody else take the risk on what they're willing to pay. And the bank is taking the risk. That's why the bank calls the appraiser, because the appraiser is the eyes and ears, boots on the ground. We go in, we find that cat pee smell, we find the cracks in the foundation, and we find all the problems that the MLS pictures aren't going to show. And then we report back and we go, well, sorry, but the comps don't say that it's worth X. Well, the buyer is still free to pay that. They just have to bring a little more cash to the table if they truly want it. And then, of course, that sale becomes a new comparable sale in the market. But up to that point, the reason everybody gets upset typically is they're asking the bank to take all the risk. They're saying, I want to pay what I want to pay, and I want Seth and Mallory to take all the risk. And then Seth and Mallory go, well, let's see what the appraiser says, because we don't want to take all the risk on this deal. We see that it was listed for 210 and sold for 270. You want us to take all the risk on that deal just because you want it? It doesn't work that way. There are checks and balances in the market, and in the appraisal, just like an inspection, it's part of the checks and balance process. We're just reporting information with which everybody, if my appraisal comes in low, I don't then have the power to tell you, Seth, can't make that loan. Sorry. No, I'm just a reporter. I just tell you, and then you have new information with which to make a decision. Okay, let's look at this. Can you bring a little more money in? Can we renegotiate with the seller? Where can we go with this? So an appraisal is really just a report or new information with which you can make decisions with going forward. I see Sheila asked a great question. Why are appraisers stating it's stable, a stable market when it's an increasing market? Is it because they don't want to do time adjustments for older sales? Awesome. So Sheila knows the deal. What I would say, Sheila, is don't confuse a checkbox on page 1 of the appraisal with a conscious decision made by the appraiser. So when you use the word stating, you are giving too much credit to a lot of appraisers. You are assuming they actually took the time to think about that. I agree. I do a lot of appraisal reviews, and usually one of the first things I check is what's their assessment of the market? Is it stable, increasing, or declining? And I will see a lot of appraisers still marking stable, and then right under stable is in balance, meaning the supply of homes is in balance. Are you kidding me? We wouldn't be having this discussion if the market was in balance. Of course it's not in balance. And then right under that is marketing time. Under 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 months to 1 year. And they'll just line them up. They'll go, the market is stable, supply is balanced, and marketing time is 3 to 6 months. When is the last time you all saw a house sit on the market for 3 to 6 months? 5 years?
Long time. Yeah.
Average marketing time, 8 hours in this market, if that. Usually it's a pocket listing. You guys throw it on a Facebook group. Hey, got a listing coming up. Boom. 27 offers, lines out the door, and the deal is sold. And in fact, you put sold before broadcast, no pictures, no information. Appraiser can't use it as a comp. Shame on you guys when you do that. So if you're going to do that, essentially, the appraiser, you just have to ask the appraiser, is the market really stable or is it increasing? I mean, every appraiser who actually and honestly assesses the market is going to come to the conclusion based on the comparable sales. One sold 6 months ago for X, one sold 3 months ago for X higher, and one sold yesterday for even higher. Oh, well, that's pretty clear. The market is increasing. So Sheila asked a good question though. If the appraiser marks that it's a stable market, then that gets them out of the opportunity to apply a time of sale adjustment to older sales. Okay, so let's say I find a comp that sold yesterday for 300,000, and I found a comp that sold 6 months ago for 275. Same house, all things being equal. Well, that, assuming I have other information, that would tell me the market is increasing. Same house went from 275 to 300 over a 6-month period. Well, I can also look at MLS data over the last year, and I can see the median sale prices have gone up 8.6%. The average sale prices have gone up 9%. I can derive some type of information that the market has increased since this time last year. And then I can apply a monthly adjustment for a sale that's 6 months old. I can say, well, if the market has increased 8% median sale price since last year, that's about 0.5, 0.6% per month increase. So a 6-month-old comp, I should be applying a 3.5, 4% adjustment to. But some appraisers, yes, they will mark stable on page 1 so that they don't have to apply a time of sale adjustment on the sales comparison approach. Does that make sense?
Does.
You can push back on it, but it may not help your deal. Sometimes agents will get stuck on one or two things because the appraisal didn't come in at value or the value they wanted, and they'll pick one or two things out and they'll go, if they would have just done this, then the value would come in. But it is a great question. In my opinion, appraisers should be marking increasing market in most cases, not in all, but in most cases. So market is increasing, marketing time under 3 months. We're supposed to comment, by the way. We have a summary in our reports, a big summary that says marketing times are typically from here to here. The market is increasing due to these reasons: low inventory, strong buyer demand, low cost of funds, blah, blah, blah. We're supposed to comment on all those things. A lot of appraisers, unfortunately, they're just checking boxes quickly, throwing comps in, adjusting and going on. But they should be marking increasing. And in my opinion, in most cases, they should also be looking very hard at whether or not an older comp should get a time of sale adjustment for being an older comp. Now, I'll tell you where it doesn't apply. Where it doesn't apply is if I look at that older sale, it's 6 months old, and it sold for less than similar sales are selling for today. But if I look at that sale and I look at the list price, what it listed at and what it sold for, let's say it sold for $30,000 or $40,000 more than what it was listed at. Part of that increase in the sale price of that 6-month-old comp, the increase already ate up some of that appreciation. Does that make sense? So we have to look very carefully. We can't just assume that every sale that happened 6 months or a year ago was the perfect sale price for that sale. We do see a lot of sales where they already sold 10 or 15 or 20% over their list price, which kind of sucks up some of the appreciation it would have had if it were going to sell today. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm cutting you off too. Apparently they're doing construction at my office. So I apologize. I'm trying to like mute and unmute.
No worries. Anybody have any questions on, I see questions.
There's quite a few kind of coming in. I don't necessarily see it totally.
So there's stable. Oh, okay. So Renee asked a great question. Does it help when agents provide info about the property comps and other justification we use to set a purchase price? Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I can't speak for all appraisers, but I love it when you make my job easier. And you're also, if I am going to have a problem, a lot of times I'm going to reach out to the listing agent and say, hey, we're really struggling with this one. I see where you listed it. I see where you sold. Any chance you can shoot me over your CMA to show me how you priced it? That'll give me insight into what you think is a comp. Now, a lot of time agents call sales comps, and then we look at them and we go, well, factually it is a sale, but it's nowhere near a comp. So the appraiser usually kind of determines whether or not something is comparable. We do see all the time a lot of shenanigans where you go, they went 5 miles away and they go, well, this is the same size house. So usually not the way markets work, but it is helpful. Now, what I always say is please don't print it out on your presentation paper and make a big folder and email us all that stuff, turn it into a PDF, email it to us. If you want to email us the purchase agreements and things like that, great. We put it in what's called our digital work file for that report, which all appraisers have to have and keep for 5 years. That's all awesome information to have. So definitely give us what you think and what you were thinking along the way. Now, I'll tell you, this is a little tip. A lot of times, let's call it 95% of the time, we will get that information from the agents, how they priced it, and their comps will work against them at the end of the day. Meaning when I call up and I go, hey, we're really struggling with this one. And they go, well, did you look at the comps in our packet? And I go, yeah, actually the comps that you gave us are supporting our opinion of value, not yours. Because usually agents don't apply adjustments for differences, size, quality, condition, neighborhood, gated community, or those types of things. And we go, well, once we apply adjustments for differences, your sales were perfect for our opinion of value. They're not supporting your opinion or assessment of value. So just be careful, know how to adjust. We're going to do a training session at some point on how appraisers pick and choose comparable sales and make adjustments and that kind of stuff. So that could be valuable for some. So yes,
Matt.
it does help.
Yeah,
Question?
Mallory had a good question. She said, how do you advise us to handle appraisals when it comes in low? And do you anticipate we'll start seeing this becoming more common with how high over asking things are selling with appraisal gaps?
Yeah, great question, Mallory. And Mallory is a pro at this, by the way. When you have that scenario, now what I would advise if I was talking, if there are appraisers on the call and I was coaching appraisers, I would tell appraisers, look, when you run into problems, start shooting phone calls off. I mean, don't slap a value on it, sign it and send it off. Seth and Mallory and all the lenders can tell you just how aggravating that is, because they're waiting on pins and needles for this appraisal to come in. And they're like, well, we don't know, because a lot of decisions issue forth from that appraisal value. And so all of a sudden, appraisal comes in, it's lower than sale price. And now I used to be a lender, so I know. I also used to be a realtor, so I know. But in the lending office specifically, Seth gets that appraisal, Mallory gets that appraisal, and all of a sudden, I haven't seen a lender office yet that has a big red siren like, Farrell's ice cream used to have, but it's kind of what happens. Like, oh shit. And then that siren goes off and a bunch of phone calls and angry emails are going off. And Seth's stress level just went through the roof. And he's like, now I got to call agents. Now I got to tell my buyer. Now I got to have all these angry conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of times appraisers don't empathize with that. A lot of appraisers, not me, but a lot of appraisers are like, well, it's not my job. Let them deal with it. Well, Seth doesn't speak appraisal. Seth speaks lender, Mallory speaks lender and agent and sales, and appraisers speak appraiser. So the best person to have those conversations is the appraiser, because the appraiser can explain in appraiser language, here's what we got, here's what we're struggling with, here's what we don't have, here's the problem. Now, appraisers have to be careful. We are not supposed to be having conversations with anybody who is motivated by a commission on the sale. And we are not supposed to have what Fannie Mae calls substantive conversations regarding value with the lender, the agents, whatever. But we can have conversations. We can have conversations about the comps. We can have conversations about the lack of comps. We can have conversations about adjustments. We just can't collude on value. I can't call up Seth and go, hey, what do you need on this one, man? Yeah, okay, I'll see if I can get it. We can't have those conversations. But I absolutely think appraisers should be calling the agents, a listing agent anyway, ask for more information. Hey, am I missing something? Hey, can you send over this? Hey, do you know of any private sales in the market that maybe I've missed? Agents, you guys are in the trenches. So a lot of times you have great information that the appraiser can use. Appraiser should also call their client, in my opinion, which is always the lender, and say, Seth, I'm struggling with this one. Don't want you to have a surprise in a day or two when I send this off. Then Seth can start having conversations with everybody else in a more calm way. What the lender should do, of course, is also be willing to have those conversations and not collude on value, but help see if there's some information out there that might help shed more light. Not help support value, because remember, that's not the job of the appraiser. But if there's a way to shed more light on the whole transaction, those are the conversations that should be had. The second part of Mallory's question, do we see this happening more and more as things go on? Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to that irrational exuberance label that is happening in the market. Anytime a buyer is, and this is usually a question we get, anytime a buyer puts an escalation clause and certainly an appraisal gap guarantee or clause in there, anytime somebody puts a clause that says, I don't care what the appraisal is, I'm willing to pay X dollars over that, they are essentially and effectively saying to the market, we know we are overpaying. Plain and simple. They know they're overpaying for a home as it's going to be reported in the market today. Every real estate transaction is a speculative investment. We are told from day one that over the last 100 years, homes typically appreciate between 3 and 5%. In real estate, it's one of the best investments you can get in, and I don't disagree. The problem is, if you're willing to pay 10, 20, 30% over the list price, over the professional real estate's agent's estimate of value, you are saying to the market, I'm speculating. I think it's going to be worth this much tomorrow or next month or next year, assuming the market keeps doing what it does. You just can't count on the appraisal to agree
Now,
with you.
Blaine, if you say that though, then wouldn't you be saying that if I bought the house is up for 200, I offer 210 with a 10K appraisal gap guarantee?
Yep.
Aren't you saying that you're telling me I think it's worth 200, but I'm willing to pay 210? I'm saying no, I think it's worth 210. I have enough extra cash that pick me over the next guy. Does that make sense? Like
It does.
I still think it's worth 210. My 10K appraisal gap guarantee doesn't guarantee that I'm thinking it's worth 10K less. Is that fair?
Yeah, great point. And again, I would just point back to equivocation on the word worth. What's worth it to the buyer is different than the definition of worth to the appraiser. So the appraiser, as you know, is reporting what worth is in the market based on comparable sales. So when somebody writes in an appraisal guarantee, they say, I'm willing to cover this. Yes, they are saying to them, yeah, I don't care if it's 100,000 over list price. We just had that last week, by the way, $100,000 appraisal gap coverage or guarantee. That is somebody saying it's worth it to me, but I fully understand that the market data, which is what the appraisal delivers, the market data may not agree with me today. But I am speculating that tomorrow or next week or next month, that house will be worth 210 and we will have made the right decision. And again, I don't disagree with you. The problem is that appraisals don't speculate on what's going to happen in 6 months. Appraisal is always backward looking. We look at yesterday to 2 years ago. So we say, as of today, Seth, the market reports, comparable sales say this house is only worth X. The problem is it's become the norm in the market today to go, yeah, I get it. But everything over the last 2 years has just been increasing. And again, the appraiser's job is not to go, yeah, but the appraiser's job is just to simply say, it's not there yet. Don't have a comp that says it. Now, I'll tell you where sometimes this plays out for appraisers, and I think all appraisers should do this. We will have a deal, your 210 deal, Seth, 200,000, buyer is willing to pay 210, 10,000 appraisal gap guarantee. I look in the market, all my comps say 190 to 200 all day long. Oh, but I see a pending sale listed for 200. I'm assuming that thing's going to close for more. I call up the agent and I go, you got the perfect comp here for me. I see it's pending. Are you willing to tell me what it's pending at, sale price wise, and when it's going to close? And most agents will share with me and they'll say, yep, it's pending at 220 and it's going to close in 2 weeks. And I go, great. Then I call Seth back up, the lender, and I go, hey, Seth, here's the deal. If I submit the appraisal today, we can't support value. If we can wait 2 weeks, we're not blowing any rate locks or anything like that, we got the perfect comp and I think I can show that value is there. And if that's the case, I think that's what all appraisers should be doing, is looking at those pending sales. Because there's nothing worse than coming in lower than sale price on an appraisal and having a comp show up in the market 1 week later. That's the perfect comp that would have supported that sale price. So that's where appraisers should be looking ahead short term, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then letting the lender decide, hey, we can wait. Let's use that comp. Other than that, the appraiser is always bound by the effective date, more or less, and the comps that are in the market up to that point. So when appraisal guarantees and escalation clauses are in there, the appraisal clause gap and the escalation clause only speak to the buyer's irrationality and excitement about buying that house. They don't speak to value. And remember, buyers buy on monthly payment, appraisers appraise on overall value. Buyers in this current market, because of irrational exuberance and extreme competition, are rarely concerned about overall value because they're speculating. They're looking at the increase in sale price that they're willing to pay, and they go, how much more in a monthly payment is that for us? But the appraiser doesn't care about monthly payment. Appraiser looks at overall sale price and closed prices of the comparable sales. And that's sometimes where the gap in understanding is. Buyers going, well, I can afford this monthly payment. And appraisers going, yeah, I don't know anything about the monthly payment. Just the values aren't supported by similar comparable sales in the market. Mallory, I know that was a long answer to your simple question, but hopefully that answered it.
I think that answered a lot of the other questions. At least a couple.
Thank you, it did.
Yeah.
Pam asked about pools. I've seen this a lot in your group. Pools, hurt value, help value. What's your take?
Yeah. Depends on the market. think we just had this question in the group not too long ago, and the answer is always the same. Depends on the market. There are markets where, take, for example, a market where the predominant demographic is first-time homebuyers, young families with young children. You will see typically a negative response to in-ground pools or pools in general, because they don't want the kids to fall in and drown. Very rational concern. Then you will see some middle market neighborhoods where you go, oh, well, we've got teenagers and they love having parties out at the pool. And yes, we love pools. And you will see positive reaction to in-ground pools. You go to high-end neighborhoods where it's pretty common and you go, yep, of course, everybody wants an in-ground pool. You have to do research in the market. You have to pull similar comparable sales. I would say go 2 or 3 years back, pull all the data you can, similar type home, ranch house between 1,000 and 1,300 square feet, and then look for pools versus no pools. And if you can see a noticeable percentage difference in sale prices between the pool houses and the no pool houses, then you have your answer. And where there is little to no discernible data, we typically just go, well, no adjustment because there's no discernible data. But that's how appraisers find adjustments for things like pools. Again, no easy, adjustment card. Oh, in-ground pool, that's 10 grand. Same thing with pole barns, by the way. Pole barn, 10 grand. Okay, it doesn't work that way. You look in the market and you go, are pole barns expected? Are they not expected? And if so, is there a negative reaction in the market to those? Positive reaction, and how much are they willing to pay to either have or not have that feature? Hopefully that makes sense.
Let's see. I mean, we're coming up at 9:59. What do you think, Macy? Should we just go to 11? I think we got.
Yeah, I feel like that we could go on and on about this, right?
I have
Blaine, I was gonna say, Blaine, if you've got the time, we can keep rolling through these questions, but I don't want to be disrespectful of your time.
I'm yours for the time being, so ask away.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see Jerry asked about pending. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mary's got one kind of about those too.
Okay. And Bo asked about unique houses, which I'll get to. Yep. So Jerry asked a great question. Can you use pending comp for sale price if the buyer agent from the pending sale is willing to share that info, which I just talked about? Unfortunately, we cannot give any weight to a pending sale in the final opinion of value. We can speak to it. We can put it in the report. And in fact, most reports today will have listings and or pending sales in there to show what the market is doing, but we can't give any weight to a pending or listing because the transaction could fall apart, which goes back to my earlier statement, which is why I think appraisers should look and see, when is this thing closing? If it's closing in a week or two, I want to see if I can wait. And if it's going to help me paint the picture or tell the story in the appraisal. Great question. Seth said, appraiser used to comp from a different school district, no adjustment. Is there a place for that to show up on an appraisal? Yeah, great question. It's in the location section. So on the sales grid or the sales comparison grid, which is page 2 of the actual data. Page 1 is factual stuff. Page 2 is the sales comparison approach. One of the line items across the board is location. And in location is where typically appraisers will put neutral or beneficial or adverse location, and then state why. Forest Hill schools versus Lowell schools, or so on and so forth. Where there is no adjustment for school district, either the appraiser didn't believe there was a significant adjustment, an adjustable difference, or just simply skipped over it, either on purpose or didn't see the noted difference. Yeah, great question. Agents, sorry, Lauren, I'm not sure what that applies to. Agents that list under actual, okay, yeah. So we do see this as a tactic, agents that list under market value to create bidding wars. We do see that. And on the flip side of this spectrum, we also see some agents who will change the list price to the sale price in the listing data to fool the appraiser. You're not fooling the appraiser. We have to look at the listing history in the MLS and we have to report on it. It's a Fannie Mae requirement. So we put the whole listing history from the day you listed it. We have to go back 12 months minimum. And we put everything. So if you listed it at 200 and it sold for 240 and all of a sudden you put a price change in, 240, I know it changed, it helps your stats and whatnot, but it doesn't fool the appraiser. We see what you were thinking. So I would say if you're doing it for the appraiser, skip that. See you, Jerry. Thanks for being there, bud. But we do see some tactics where agents are listing under to create crazy bidding wars. I don't think you need to in this market. I mean, there's a bidding war on everything. But we do look at that. And then we also look at that listing history relative to other similar sales listing histories in the market. And a lot of times we will see agents will actually put in the commentary listed below market value to create market, essentially. We get it. And we, there's a saying in the appraisal world, one house does not make an appraisal, or one house does not an appraisal make. So we are always looking at the subject relative to all the other comparable sales, or the comparable sales relative to the subject. And we're usually looking at 8, 10, 12, sometimes 15 comps. We do everything digitally, most of us now, but back in the day, we'd print those all out and we'd have them laying out on our desk. And just like you guys, we got a red pen and we're marking, okay, this one doesn't have this one's got this. All right, let's toss this one. And we're pulling our hair out trying to figure out truly the best comparable sales. But we're looking at lots of data. So, we don't.
Why would the list price mean anything?
Because list price is one piece of data. Think of an appraisal as 100 pieces of important data for making a decision. The list price is an important piece of data on what somebody else was thinking. That's all. Yeah. It's a way for us to report to Fannie Mae, hey, another professional in the market, the listing agent, thought it was worth X. That's where they listed it at. They don't place any weight on it, but they look at it and they go, oh, okay, we see that. Because then they weigh that piece of data against all the other data. I'll give you one more point, Seth, about information, important information in an appraisal. Normally we get a question that says something like, why is it like magic that the appraised value comes in exactly at the sale price, exactly at the purchase price, right? Everybody has that question. It is not magic. It's not voodoo. It's not something mystical. When we go back to that original question that I asked Megan, who sets the market? First answer is usually what a buyer's willing to pay, or they'll say a combination buyer and seller. They agree and they set the market. We go, okay, remember that answer. We're going to use it later. Now we go to the purchase agreement. House lists for 200, sells for 240. I got comps that support it. And I go, great. Yep. 240. Well, then somebody comes back and goes, well, you got a comp in there that said 260. Why is the house not worth 260? And we say, because buyer and seller make the market. If it was worth 260, why weren't you willing to pay 260? The purchase agreement says 240. So what an appraisal is basically we're looking for sales that sold for less. We're looking for sales that sold for more. That's called bracketing. And if we can find support for that sale price, then we defer to the purchase agreement and the agreement, the meeting of the minds between buyer and seller. And we go, well, if I have support for that sale price, then the opinion of value must be what the buyer and seller agreed on. They set the market price on that home. Now, the follow-up, the corollary question to that, Seth, is why does the appraiser get to see the purchase agreement? Shouldn't they go in blind? Well, one, it's a Fannie Mae rule. Fannie Mae says we have to analyze and summarize all contracts for sale. And why would we want it and have it? Because it is a very vital piece of information for the appraiser. Because the appraiser has to take into consideration what the participants in the market think that house is worth. And so when we see a purchase agreement, we go, well, that's valuable data to me. I want to know what a buyer thinks. I want to know what a seller thinks. I want to know what the agents think. And then I'm going to test that against the market data of comparable sales. So that's why we have to see those purchase agreements. Now, if you've got the Ski Nautique speedboat built into the purchase price and your Beanie Babies collection and whatever else, write that up on a separate addendum, because you shouldn't be asking the lender to take the risk on the boat when the boat is being built into the sale price of the home. Appraisers appraising only real estate, no personal property. So if you're building in all these incentives or other toys that are not secured by the real estate, the lender is paying more or supporting more risk than what is actually there and supportable by the asset. Questions about, Brittany asked one about condos. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, it was just, so she's got the question about condos. In the appraisal view and the comp mindset, is there a difference? in value on the ground floor versus second floor, our parking lot views versus pond views. I recently had a low appraisal that price matched a comp on a second floor lot view unit to a ground floor pond view unit.
Great question, Brittany. And unfortunately, I'll be as clear as mud on this one. It depends on the development. It depends on the units. It depends on where it is, depends on location and all that. My question back to Brittany would be, did you have a better comp on the ground floor than what the appraiser used? Did the appraiser not use an appropriate comp? A lot of times the complaints that come in are, well, why did you use that comp? That's not a good comp. And then we go, well, do you have a better one? And they go, no, but that one's not good. And we go, well, that's all we had. It's as if everybody's complaint assumes the perfect cookie cutter house and comp sold right next door yesterday, and we chose not to use it. But that's not what happens in the appraisal world. We are looking for that perfect, what we call model match. You got a 1,200 square foot ranch, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, finished basement, sold for $200,000. If the neighbor's house is exactly the same and sold in the last year, we're going to use it if it's a good comp. If it's not, we then go to the next best thing. So if that second floor unit was the best comp to utilize because it was in the same development, that's all the appraiser had. If they jumped over a better comp in the development and missed something, well, then you have a strong argument. So this goes to the reconsideration of value discussion. If we want to argue against the low appraisal, what should we do? First and foremost, don't argue your feelings. Nobody cares. You have to argue facts. And facts are better comparable sales. You have to formulate a strong argument that says, we think these are better comparable sales. We think the appraiser jumped over better comparable sales in the immediate market and used very poor sales, which sometimes happens. But you have to bring very strong factual evidence to have a reconsideration actually considered.
Thank you for that answer. And unfortunately, no, there was not better comps used. They did, I mean, those were their most recent, but I represented the buyer. The listing agent had felt that a parking lot view and a pond, you know, versus a pond and the ground floor versus second floor would have made a difference. And I didn't know the answer to that. I didn't know if those were considered.
It's a great question. We do consider it. If you think to like the riverfront condos downtown, where it's more easily discernible to go from, say, the second floor to the top floor, or the second to top floor, where the views change. And are we looking over the river, the city, the back alley? Normally, when we start doing research on those kinds of things, or Icon on Bond, or some of those downtown condos, you can see a noticeable difference between units as they go up and down. And then as far as parking goes, we'll typically look at parking. We'll say, is parking rented, leased, or is it owned? Does it come with the unit? How much are people willing to pay for parking, and so on? But the answer is always based on research, where we have to look and go, is there discernible data that a pond view is superior to a parking lot view? And if there is no discernible data, we can't just pluck an adjustment out from air and go, well, we think that's $10,000, because the underwriter then looks at that. They match it against the thousands of other appraisals they have in their system, and then they come back and they go, prove it. And this is a lot of what goes on behind the scenes that sometimes even the lender, and maybe Seth can speak to this, sometimes the lender doesn't even know the conversations that are being had between the appraisal management company and the appraiser regarding revision requests, where the management company or the underwriter will send it back to the appraiser and say, hey, we want 2 more sales that support your opinion of value. We don't think these ones are good sales. And sometimes the lender on the deal doesn't even know that that's going on. And then the appraiser's back in the file and looking for more research and all that stuff. We answer very heavily to underwriting requirements and to Fannie Mae requirements. Sometimes I think people kind of see appraisers as like Lone Rangers in the Wild Wild West. We just do what we want whenever we want. The problem is we're always answering to Fannie Mae guidelines because they are buying those or securing those loans. And we have to have really solid market data supporting it.
And you might have already touched on this, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac give it a score too, right, Blaine? Like you probably touched on that.
I didn't touch on it, but great point. So the lenders can speak to this much better than I can, but I know that in underwriting, there's a risk score. So you guys throw the data through the CU, I believe, collateral underwriter, and it comes out with a risk score, 0 maybe, or 1 to 5. And that risk score will determine what more information they need. And again, Seth or Mallory or any of the lenders could speak more to it, but I believe it's probably at 3 or something, some requirements are being kicked in, like, hey, we want a little more info on this, this, or this. Seth, can you speak to that?
Yeah, if conventional rates it as a 2.5 or less, no questions asked. Breeze through the pictures, make sure there's nothing missed. If it's a 5, it could require a second appraisal. I don't know if I've ever had that happen, but usually they ask comments, and usually we shoot them over to you. You did a good job in the appraisal. You shoot them back the answer, and we're good.
Yeah.
I've had it before where they've required like a drive-by appraisal.
Yep. And
or like a desktop review, somebody to review the first appraisal.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it isn't necessarily bad or insufficient appraisal. It's insufficient market data, where again, those comps are just burning up as they go. And the the underwriter looks at it and goes, yeah, this looks like a good appraisal, but we see what the market is doing. We want a little more info. Underwriters also have very sophisticated systems that they can utilize. I've seen what are called heat maps before, where the underwriter can pull up a heat map of an area and it will show values of neighborhoods in colors. And so if an appraiser used all comparable sales from a different colored neighborhood, a higher value neighborhood, they will flag it for overvaluation. Seth and Mallory, you guys have probably seen this before, where it's flagged for overvaluation. And they go, based on all the data we have, we think this house is overvalued. And then the appraiser's job is try to explain why it's not, why the comps are good, neighborhood was good, and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times we can answer that with no problem. And then they're comfortable. They go, oh, okay, makes sense. But if it's flagged by the computer system, the algorithm, appraiser has more work to do. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to the appraisal part of the process. Sheila asked another good question. Dealing with a low appraisal. Going to try the sale pending idea. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just found a perfect comparable. Thanks. Oh, yeah. So she's going to try the, sorry, I thought it was a question. She found a pending sale. Yes. Will all appraisers do that for you? No, unfortunately. I can't coach them all, but if I could, I would tell them all, look at those damn pending sales, because those could be the key to the kingdom as far as painting a very solid picture in the appraisal. Remember, it's not our job to support a sale price, but I want to paint the most accurate picture as possible. And pending sales are usually screaming out to us going, hey, here's what the market is doing. If you can wait a week, I'll prove it to you. And since most appraisal values these days are at the high end of the comp range, we have to explain that. We have to say, look, my highest comp is 250. The appraised value is 250. It's at the high end of the range for these reasons. Every recent sale is the highest sale in the market since yesterday, and that's why it's happening. And low interest rates, strong buyer demand, blah, 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 low inventory.
I feel like you're getting the, like with the pending method, I can just see that like working great, but then also do you feel like you're getting a lot of pushback if you're like, hey, I want to wait for this pending sale, but then all these rush appraisals and everyone's trying to close in like, 2 weeks. Like, do you feel like that's something we can do, or as like an agent we can allow for, or things like that?
Well, certainly if you know of, say, pending sales listings, things that have gone or are going to go pending that you think are going to help paint a better picture for the appraiser, certainly present that stuff, either in the pre-package that you send off to us. But again, that's why I think it is important for the appraiser, and I don't know if there's any appraisers on this call, but if it's important for the appraiser to then call his client, the lender, and let them decide, because they have rate locks that are going to be blown, and then the agents, we have to close by this date. So at least if it's Seth or Mallory's decision, like, hey, nope, we're good with it. Send it over. We need to close this deal and we understand. And there's an appraisal clause in there and whatever else. Then we go, okay, then, it's not me. It's you guys need to do it. And you've got all the information to make the decision. And then I sleep so much better at night knowing that you guys made the decision, not me. And we are concerned about it. Most appraisers, most of my colleagues and compatriots in the appraisal business, we do pull our hair out over these things. It's not like we just wake up and go, let's kill some deals today. We're looking hard at these. And you guys all know, I'm friends with so many of you and I come in and talk all the time. I don't want to put my personal health at risk. You guys wanted to kill me when I walk into a room. So we're trying to do the best we can with the best information available to us. And just as a side note for all the agents, our comparable sales are based on the information you put in the MLS. Put good information. If you sell it before broadcast, I get it. You're not going to hire a professional photographer to go out there, but you could have the homeowner snap a bunch of pictures and then upload to the MLS. It's not uncommon these days to have things sold before broadcast, and they put it on the information, but there's not enough info to really use that one as a great comparable sale. And it might be the very one that makes the deal work. But if we look at it and we go, well, we know nothing. Now the appraiser usually calls the agent and go, hey, I see there's no pictures. Can you tell me about the interior and whatever? But it just helps to have really good information in the MLS. Terrence posted something. What are your thoughts on disclosing appraisal gap guarantee as terms of sale on closed listings? Yeah, Terrence, great question. And I know, gosh, there were hundreds and hundreds of comments on that one. Mallory was in there. So many of you were in there offering awesome info. I learned something from all those discussions too. It's a great question. I think any terms of the sale, terms of the financing are already in there. Conventional deal, here's what it closed for. What we don't get to see, well, we do get to see sales concessions, which is good. That's important. We get to see how much is kicked back to the seller or paid for the buyer. It would be good to know if the speedboat was included and those kinds of things. Because all of those, again, to go back to my comment to Seth, it's vital pieces of data that help paint a picture about that particular deal. You know, we already need to know if a deal was paid for with cash or financing, was it FHA or conventional. That just gives us some nuance to what the motivations of the seller and the buyer were in that deal. And I think, yes, it would be good to see. Go back to that $100,000 appraisal guarantee we just had last week. $400,000 house, $100,000 appraisal gap guarantee, basically unlimited. They're willing to pay up to 25% more than what the appraisal says the house is worth. Again, I don't care. Pay whatever you want for it. But if the comps aren't there, the comps aren't there. But that would be good for everybody to know, including the agents, if that was reported in the final listing data. And when you see a $500,000 sale price, let's say it goes all the way to 500, and you go, whoa, this looks out of character for this neighborhood. And then you see, well, there was a $100,000 appraisal gap guarantee. You would go, oh, well, no wonder. They were rich. They had cash. They didn't care. They were old, and this was their final, whatever the deal. You go, they didn't give a shit about what they paid for that house. But one house does not a market make. So you take it in consideration, you look, but you can't just go, well, here's a $500,000 comp. That means all similar homes should be 500,000. No, the motivation of the buyer was heavily weighting on that deal. They were willing to pay more than everybody else. Maybe they just had a big ego and they said, I want to beat everybody in the market and I'm willing to pay 100 grand more and I have the cash. That's not every house and it's not every deal. That's why we look at 5, 6, 7 comparable sales, because we want to see, are there outliers? That one's going to be an outlier. And it would be better for all of you to know than probably it would be for me, but it would be great information. So long answer made longer to you, Terrence. Yes, I think that would be great information to have in the listing information, because you get a better idea than of motivation of both buyer and seller. And motivation speaks to all contracts. How motivated are you? Are you under duress? Is there a gun to your head? We need to know that stuff. What's your opinion on the effects of all the appraisal guarantees for future values? Oh, we're screwed. Clearly we're screwed. Plain and simple. Because this goes back to my last answer. Because we don't get to see those appraisal guarantees in the listing data. So all you're getting to see is final sale price. And you don't know what the motivation was, what they were competing against, were there escalation clauses, how motivated are they? All you see is final sale price. All we see is final sale price. And we don't know the negotiations. We don't know how desperate they are. We assume desperation in this market, but we can't go backwards until something else happens and the market stabilizes or changes. So once those sales are in the MLS, They are, of course, the support that everybody uses for the next sale price next week, right? It's what we're all looking at. Well, that one down the street just sold for 500 grand. Everything else before it sold for 400 grand. Let's price it right there. And then we're going to point to that one as the support for the sale price. And that's essentially what's happening, is all these appraisal guarantees are raising the sale prices. Let's be honest, ridiculous levels. I mean, if houses normally increase in a stable market 3 to 5%, 10% is unsustainable long-term. And these appraisal gap guarantee or appraisal guarantees are raising sale prices sometimes 10% just like that, sometimes 15, sometimes 20. So you're creating an unsustainable long-term market, which is going to have an effect on future values for sure. Remember, I mean, we didn't even talk about equity. I think that was built into the marketing material. We're going to talk about equity. We haven't even brought up equity.
Well, I was going to say, what do you do then? What's the solution? What's your solution? I'll say.
I could, quite honestly, I don't. I think it would be too easy to come up with a one. I don't think there is a solution. I think, like all markets, if I were to throw a graphic up here, I have somewhere on my computer. It shows market cycles. You can all Google it. Market cycles, when they go like this and they go like this. We are at the top, and we could stay there for a long time. I'm not saying we're about to crash, but we're at the top, which is where irrational exuberance lives. People are irrational with what they buy. It doesn't matter if it's the gold market, the diamond market, or the real estate market. Same thing, by the way, is happening in the used vehicle market. If anybody's ever tried to sell a used vehicle, people are paying premiums for used vehicles. I don't know why. Something with the market. It's going on with houses, but it's at the top of a market cycle. And then what happens as things stabilize or change is depression and people screaming, you know, this can't be happening to me. And you see that it bottoms out, where bottom is acceptance, where people go, oh, well, shit, there goes half of our value. Okay. And then it starts to come up. And these are like 40-year cycles. So, I mean, this could go on for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's already gone on for years already. If somebody asked me 3 years ago, when's it all going to stabilize or crash? I would have said tomorrow. But somehow it keeps going on, mostly because of money printing from the Fed and making things easy. But you can't sustain 10 or 15% increases every single year forever. The problem, of course, is as people are speculating, you know, if you bought GameStop when it was at 300, you lost. Sorry, it was at the peak. Now it's at 160 and floating between 140 and 200. If you bought GameStop when it was $10, you won big as long as you got out at the right time. Well, your money is made in real estate when you're buying. If you buy it right and you ride the wave and it does increase, then you can cash out. So equity is the difference between what you owe and what you own. Difference between one letter. I owe 300, but it's worth 350. You have 350. You have $50,000 in equity. And by the way, if I were coaching you on how to build your wealth, I would say, good, put that on your statement of net worth. You have $50,000 net worth built into your house. Your house is a liability. It's costing you every month. However, you've got equity. Well, if market values stabilize or start to go down, your $50,000 in equity, of course, goes away. If you're speculating today that it's going to be worth 10, 15, 20% next year, just because that's what it's done over the last 5 years, it's a big speculation. It's a GameStop level speculation. And maybe it will be true. And maybe in a year you can sell and cash out your 50 grand in growth. But if you can't, and if you're counting on it, and if you're living the averages, people stay in their house 5 to 7 years. Well, 5 to 7 years, we could be at the bottom of that market cycle. We don't know. So unfortunately, I don't think there is a one solution. I do think the solution probably lies outside of all of our control, because it's built into the Fed, the long-term T-bill rates, and housing policy, and all of that stuff, money printing, and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I hold no animosity toward agents who are your job is to get the most for your seller and get the best scenario for your buyer. The appraiser's job is to come in, strip the deal of all of its emotion, and just point to the facts, which again is where some of the ire comes from, you know, the upset at the appraiser. How dare they? We wanted this. And there's lots of emotion built in. And then the appraiser goes, yeah, well, I'm the Grim Reaper. I got to strip this thing of all of its motion and tell you the facts, and the facts are the comparable sales. So, are there any others? Oh, thank you all.
They've picked your brain through. What else? What, if you could leave with like one final blurb, what would it be to everyone on the call?
Well, again, I'm depends on where you're looking at things from. Again, I teach and coach on wealth building and things like that. So I'm looking at real estate from a wealth building. Obviously, people they're buying real estate in most cases because it's a place to live, and that's why they want it. And they go, we don't care what we're paying because that's our family home, and we're going to live there. And to that, I say, great. People, they just have to understand, again, to go back to that risk thing. They have to understand that it's okay to pay whatever you want for a house. You just can't expect everybody else to take the risk for your decisions, especially the lender. Again, to use the stock market example, you're free to buy GameStop at whatever you want to buy it at, but the stock market's going to determine whether you win or lose. Your decision-making will. In the real estate market, you can't expect everybody else to take the risk when you're willing to overpay based on what current market values say on an appraisal. And as long as everybody goes into it understanding that and understanding the risks of speculation in this market, people are fine. It's when they go into it with little or no information. You know, one of the parts of the definition of Fannie Mae's definition of market value is well-informed, well-informed buyer and seller. So well-advised and well-informed, sorry. Buyer and seller are well-informed, well-advised, and acting in their own best interest. That's part of the definition of market value. And I say this every time I give a talk. No, none of the agents here, you guys are all the pros, but have you ever been in a transaction with another agent where you felt their buyer or seller was not well-informed or well-advised?
Yes.
The whole Zoom call is shaking. Like, yep, been there. Yeah, of course. Because either the agent didn't know to inform or advise their buyers, but I think as long as you guys are doing your job, especially on the buying side, again, listing side is to get as much as you possibly can for your sellers. I get it. I do the same thing. On the buying side, I think you have some fiduciary responsibility and due diligence involved with educating your buyers that this is the market and you do understand. And I know a lot of you do because I see those discussions on the GRAR page. Just letting your buyers know, in 5 to 7 years, this could look differently for you. If you're going to be there 10, 15, 20, maybe it's not a big deal. If you're going to be there 2, could be a GameStop situation. Could be you're catching the market when it changes. Who knows? But as long as they go into it well-informed and well-advised, you're going to have happy repeat referrals and future clients. What we might see, by the way, let's talk real briefly appraisal waivers. So there are the appraisal waivers. If I were to show you the graph on appraisal waivers over the last 5 years, appraisal waivers from lenders, by the way, that's what I'm referring to, where the lender comes back and says, hey, that address qualifies for an appraisal waiver, meaning we don't need an appraisal on it to close the deal. It looks like a hockey stick. Appraisal waivers over the last 10 years kind of went like this. And then whoosh, in the last year, they shot up to 50, 60% of refi transactions. Not a bad thing. In many cases, Fannie and Freddie, they look in their system and they go, well, we've already got an appraisal from 2 years ago. We look at the market data, we run our algorithm, we see everything is solid. We're good. Because usually in a refi, it's rate and term. So they're lowering their monthly payment, they're increasing value, and the lender goes, we're comfortable with it. No appraisal needed. On a purchase transaction, however, what we find is that quite often buyers equate an appraisal waiver with a confirmation of the value they are, or the price they are paying. Meaning the lender comes back and says, hey, there's a waiver on this. And even if the lender explains, this doesn't mean your house is worth X, it just means we don't need an appraisal on it. The buyer only hears what they want to hear. And a lot of times the buyers don't realize an appraisal waiver does not mean your house is worth what you are paying for it today. It only means that the lender is willing to take the risk based on all the factors, the buyer's credit and money down and that address and whatever else. So buyer's agents specifically, I would advise making sure you have a very solid discussion with your clients and say, look, we got an appraisal waiver on this, but understand you can still pay for an appraisal if you want. You can still get one, and understand an appraisal waiver does not mean your house is worth what you're paying. It only means that the lender's okay with the risk. Well-informed, well-advised. Then the buyer can make their own choice and decision. Make sense?
Totally. Does anyone else have any last minute questions at all? Looks like you've got lots of thank yous in there.
Yes, and Blaine, I'm getting emails like crazy of people that had things come up. Do you mind if I share this recording with membership?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
Please do. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. And this is what we do. So don't hesitate to reach out either in our Facebook group or call me personally. You can reach out via Facebook. We love answering questions and helping bridge that gap of understanding between the appraisal profession and what you guys do. You guys are superstars, and we appreciate working with you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you
so
so
this was fantastic, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you around.
Thanks, gang.
Good day.
All right, take care, everyone.
Appreciate it.